WestJet says it's in the process of repositioning and refocusing its services across Canada. This as the airline has slashed service in Atlantic Canada, Ontario, and Quebec. That reportedly includes an 80% cut in flights between Toronto and Montreal compared to pre-pandemic levels. Alexis von Hoensbroech is the CEO of WestJet Airlines. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Catherine. Happy to be here.
Well, I want to start by asking you about how Canadians are feeling about their air carriers right now. I saw WestJet put up what I think most people would say was a pretty benign Facebook post just a few days ago saying, we're here to help our guests get to where they are going, wherever that may be. Over 600 people commented. Some of the comments are things like, what a joke. You left us stranded at Christmas with no information and no help. That's absolutely laughable. Many people talking about canceled routes to serve Eastern Canada. What do you think it says about your company that so many Canadians are feeling ticked off right now?
Well, we do recognize that time over Christmas was tough, but we still flew 1.3 million guests to the destination. Mm-hmm. So I think the majority of our guests made their way, but we do recognize that it was very challenging. It was a generational storm that we were hit by.
Like a once in a generation.
Yes, yeah. I would say so. So both the strength, the duration, the fact that it went across the entire continent, and the fact that it happened during the busiest week of the year before Christmas was just a compounding chain of events that made it far worse than normal storms would have been. Of course, Canada is a cold place in winter, and there will always be disruptions, but the extent of this was really generational. And there's no airline system in the world that could handle this without disruptions, for sure.
I wonder, when you see comments like that, though, someone in your position, do you say, well, that is unfortunately the nature of doing business in the airline industry, or do you say, we have a problem, we have some real trust that we need to rebuild?
We have a problem, for sure, and we took a lot of learnings out of this, and we do recognize that we have failed in certain areas, so our communication was nowhere where it should be. The way we handled especially baggage issues was not how it's supposed to be. So we actually are going to redirect a lot of our own investments this year into fixing operational problems that were resurfaced during this outage or this winter storm. But at the same time, I think it's also important to recognize that it's not just airlines that make aviation a seamless and reliable and resilient mode of transportation.
Ideally,
yeah?
Ideally.
It requires a compounding effort of several parties. So it's airlines for sure, and we bear our part of the responsibility for sure. But it's also airports, it's navigation, it's security agents, and so on. And so even if we would do everything perfect, if a baggage system fails during the storm, as it did in one major airport, if an airport is not able to clean its tarmac from snow, or if an airport runs out of appropriate de-icing fluid during a storm, then it's actually outside of what we can control as an airline. So therefore, what we require is a shared accountability for our collective product that we are offering to our guests. And that's something we need to work on.
Okay, let's talk about something that is within your control, and it is another place where you're facing some pushback, the service cuts that you announced, slashing service to Atlantic Canada, Ontario, Quebec. You've heard from people who are disappointed by this choice. How do you explain that to them? They need these flights, whether it be to visit family, for work, and this is a real loss for them.
Well, first of all, I would say the good news is that we are actually growing our services and we are not cutting in a large scale of
You're repositioning then.
Yeah, sure. But we will be growing, on the long run, we will be growing in all airports in Canada. Mm-hmm. So we are refocusing where we put our growth, but we are the airline which has the largest order book of airplanes of all Canadian carriers. So we actually have 65 737 MAX airplanes from Boeing on order, and they will arrive over the next 5 years. This will deliver a tremendous amount of growth. This year alone, we will be growing by more than 30% in terms of passengers over last year. And this even drives a lot of employment. So this year we are going to employ 2,200 frontline workers into our group, and this is also happening across all of Canada.
So I do want you to help me understand, though. If I'm listening at home right now and I have lost service to get me from Eastern Canada to Western Canada because of some of the cuts that you've just made, are you telling me eventually that's going to come back, or are you saying, no, we're prioritizing different things? If we've cut this service right now, like you shouldn't sit around crossing your fingers hoping that this is going to get resolved in the next few months.
The good news is we haven't cut any east to west services because this is part of our core business. We're actually growing east to west. We are also growing east to south because we are Canada's favorite leisure airline. So we are growing significantly east to south, and all of Canada to south. And with our proposed transaction of Sunwing, we actually even grow this over proportionally. What we are doing less now is flights within Eastern Canada. By the way, these are extremely well-served markets. As we are refocusing our network into growing more transcontinental and more towards leisure destinations. And that's what we're growing. That's what Canadians love about WestJet, is that we are their favorite leisure airline, and we are going to do more of this. So
what I hear you saying, though, I take your points about the different priorities, but what I hear you saying is no, those cuts that you've made, those specific routes are not going to come back anytime soon.
Every airline will always make some route decisions because you look at what's working and what's not, and you try out things, and then you try a route and you work, and then you find out that it doesn't work, so you cut it back and you open other routes. That's what we're doing.
Okay.
And we see that some of our flying within Eastern Canada was not coming up to our expectations. We brought them in a few years ago, and now we take them out again, and then we do something else. But the overall service level, the overall capacity that we deliver to the market is going to grow across all of Canada. Some parts faster than others, and of course in the West we have our strongholds, and we will grow over proportionally in the West. Okay. But also Eastern Canada will see more over time.
I want to ask you before I let you go about one of the sort of broader issues that airlines, including yours, is facing, and this comes along with the Transport Minister's response to what happened over the holidays. He said, I'm going to introduce new legislation. The onus to resolve customer complaints needs to be on the airlines more. I know that officials from your airlines have said, we're not interested in something that automatically puts the onus on us. I also know that while you're in town, you're going to be meeting with the Transport Minister. So what sort of efforts are you going to make to convince, or will you be trying to convince the Transport Minister to do otherwise and to not have much more onus be on the airlines rather than, in his view, the passengers?
Well, I think there's nothing wrong in having strong consumer rights. Yeah? So therefore, we support that. But what we also need, and that goes back to my initial point, is that this is a shared product that we are producing, and it's just wrong to just impose this on airlines, but everyone else can basically fail on what they're doing. So I'm not saying that we are not failing on anything. There are lots of things that we have to do better, and we will invest a lot into this. But it also requires that airports and navigation and security agents and so on, that they are also taking responsible for the service that they deliver to our guests, and that's what we request. And I think this is a very reasonable thing, because unless we collectively produce a reliable product, we can't do this as just one of several parties in this environment.
I take your point, but I guess I wonder if I had traveled over the holidays, and I didn't. I want to make this clear. This isn't about me at all. But if I had traveled and I was seeking a refund and I wasn't getting it, and I'm hearing, the complaint backlog is going to take months and months and months, I'm at home going, you know what? Maybe it's a multifaceted system, but why does it have to be on the little guy? Rather, maybe you're the one who should be sorting out exactly whose problem it is. It feels like it's all on my shoulders, and I'm waiting for all this money.
So we process all claims that we get within 30 days. Actually, we are obliged to. Yeah? Yeah. All others are not, but we are obliged to do that, and we do this. Yeah? And 99% of all complaints that we get are being all of them are being settled within 30 days, and 99% are actually done. Yeah? And then there's a very small percentage, and there will always be a small percentage where there may be a disagreement, and these go to CTA, and that's okay. But then they take 18 months or whatever to process them. Yeah? Yes. So of course we want to bring this down. But in the large scale of things, this is a very, very small percentage that ends up with CTA, and there needs to be a way that this can be accelerated. But the vast majority of all claims that are coming in are processed in an appropriate and fast way.
Okay. Listen, you are definitely in the hot seat right now. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to us a bit about your perspective on all of this. Thank you.
Thanks for having me today.